Hello and welcome to the 18th presentation of Avalanche Canada's webinar series. Good evening, my name is Colin Garrity. I'm an Avalanche forecaster here at AvCan, and I'm the producer for the event this evening. We are so stoked you're all here tonight. Many of you have been tuning into our webinar series since October. What an awesome ride it's been. COVID has meant that we're of course not delivering face-to-face outreach presentations this year. It's a shame. But the silver lining is that we've been able to reach so many people through these online webinars. Our mission, as ever, is to help you forge your Avalanche education so that you can get out there and play safe. Of course, we want you to know more, go farther, and come home. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsors. We have our government partners here, really critical for us. Our program partners, MEC Tech and the CBT. Our premier sponsors, and our many dedicated contributors. We're very thankful to these sponsors for their financial support during these challenging economic times and for working with us to reach so many of you this winter. Just before we begin, I want to go through a few housekeeping notes. Everybody should know that they're muted automatically in the webinar software there. There will be opportunities to ask questions. So to do so, you'll click on the raise hand icon in your go-to dashboard, and then I'll unmute you so that you can ask a question. There's another way to ask a question if you're a little bit nervous about being on the mic. It's in the question chat box, which is also in the go-to dashboard. Tonight, our presentation is about, it's a panel discussion entitled Behind the Gram. So as you all know, our collective fascination with Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, really all kinds of social media sharing has become a huge part of our lives in recent years. Social media can be a great way to communicate, to share with your friends and your followers, to stay in touch, to stay linked, things that are really important in our lives. And not surprisingly, we're seeing a steady increase in its use. Social media also has a dark side, which you're probably aware of as well. Earlier this season, Ariana Tricomi, a pro rider in Europe, posted an Instagram post from the Tyrol about a 15-year-old free rider getting swept up in an avalanche and unfortunately dying from trauma. What Ariana wanted to share from this experience is that we have responsibilities when sharing through social media, to share not only the fantastic footage or the aerials, but also the rationale for riding that line, all the practice, the preparation, the reasons why you might ride that line one day but not the next, what the exit strategy, all these kinds of tougher questions, tougher ideas. In this way, a social media post can become so much more than 60 seconds of high vibes and rad moves. We know there's more to it than that. So our moderator of the panel discussion tonight is Marty Schaefer. Marty was born on skis. He spent his winters growing up at the Blanket Glacier Chalet, which was operated by his parents. Now Marty owns the Blanket and offers his courses through Kapow. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Marty and our panelists. Take it away, Marty.
Oh, what's up, you guys? I am so excited for this and just honored to be leading the panel tonight. Especially with this topic. I use social media a ton. If any of you guys actually follow some of my accounts, I use it for a variety of different things. And I've got 3 accounts, actually. I got a personal account, Marty Schaefer. I own a guiding company, which is Kapow Guiding. And I also run Blanket Glacier Chalet. So I use it not only for advertising things, but I also use it for seeing where the good ski conditions are. Where people are skiing, where they're getting after it. And like anyone, I'm sure I'm just following, I don't know, cats wearing cowboy hats and that sort of rabbit hole. But that's not what this discussion is tonight. We're not talking about cats or dad jokes. We are talking behind the gram, in particular with Avalanche education and that sort of world. And I'm really excited with this panel that we have tonight. I'm really stoked that the 4 individuals made it out. And what's actually kind of cool is we all share something quite similar. We all grew up in a world where our families brought us up skiing. We all started at a super young age. We're all from Canada, but we've sort of taken different outlets from pro skiers to up and coming guides. So I'd love to bring on the panelists. I'm really excited to start with introducing Tatum Minode, who I grew up in Canmore. Tatum just grew up down the road. She actually ski raced with my sister Heidi. She's originally from Banff, currently living in Pemberton. She's a Red Bull athlete, one of the raddest female skiers out there. Tatum comes from like a long lineage of skiers from the Minode Sports in Banff, which is like, I think it's the longest running ski shop in Canada or something like that. So big, long family history. Tatum, stoked to have ya. Where are you? Like, so I believe you're in Pemberton right now. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, I'm at home here in Pemberton. Thanks so much for having me, Marty. I'm really excited to be here too. This is awesome.
And Tatum and I have skied a bunch together at the Blanket. We've done a little bit of avalanche education and stuff together, but I'm really stoked for this conversation.
Yes.
I want to bring in Nick Mcnutt. I think he just threw down a first descent yesterday, and I know this because of social media. He's up at Micah Heli Skiing, coming at us through satellite internet. Nick's originally from Kimberley, BC. He lives on the coast now, but travels the world, which right now it's probably limited travel, but up at Micah and filming. Nick, good to have you.
Yeah, traveling BC this winter. There's nowhere else I'd rather be if we're stuck somewhere, that's for sure.
Nick, really psyched to have you. You've had a really strong social media presence over the years, so in particular lately, really psyched to have you on this panel.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to hearing what everyone else has to say about this topic, because it's something that's becoming more and more part of our lives, especially as professional skiers or as business owners. And it's a tool that we all have to use, like it or love it or hate it, whatever it is. It's there, and it's not going away probably. So.
Guys, I'm also going to bring on Avalanche Canada has a number of Avi ambassadors. We have, to start off, Alex Klassen, who's been an ambassador for a while. I think he was actually one of the first official youth Avi ambassadors. I've had Alex along as a practicum through Kapow. He's been working up at Soul Mountain Lodge. He is a sponsored skier, getting rad. His father is I think he's the head of the Avalanche Special Avalanche Warning, something like that, but been an avalanche forecaster for years. And his mom, Mary, has been involved with Avalanche Canada for a long time. But beyond that, Alex has his own identity, super rad. Alex, stoked to have you on the panel. And then the other Avi ambassador, I'm stoked to bring on Amy Ortell. She's from the coast. She's from Whistler. She's actually been, well, this year she's focusing a lot on being, she's in school to become a nurse, but she's been on the Blackcomb Ski Patrol. She's a professional mountain biker, but her parents have taken her out on skis ever since she could just walk, and been in the backcountry touring probably from that moment. Is that right? Amy, have you been ski touring ever since you can walk?
Yeah, not quite, but pretty close. Definitely started quite young with my dad, yeah.
Some sort of cool stat, hey?
Yeah, definitely.
So you guys, the classic thing that I have seen on, Facebook groups and that sort of thing, it's like the first thing people do to introduce and justify their presence in the backcountry is being able to say what sort of avalanche education they have. The classic question is, what level of AST or professional avalanche training do you guys have? I want to hear from you guys. Where are you at? How about Nick? Why don't you go first?
Yeah, I have an AST2. I don't have any ops courses, but intend on getting them eventually. But AST2, and I'm lucky enough that I film with TGR, and they do a really good job of hosting all of their production crew and athletes early season in December, and we usually all have like a 3-day, 4-day session together. And it's not always like a certification thing, like you don't get a ticket necessarily, because it's really practical, and the people who teach it are really kind of tweaking it for specifically like filming and our typical setups that we would have, because it's a little bit unique in that you have people pretty spread out, or sometimes someone on slope while someone's skiing, or people might be pretty far away on a ridge across the valley. And so it's, yeah, really nice if they do that. They do a good job of making sure that everyone's well trained, and that goes for like the photographers, the cinematographers, the athletes, and everyone involved. So it's not super official as far as certifications in that sense, but it's really useful.
You know what's cool with that is I can relate working as a guide, whether it's from like a big operation like CMH, where at the start of every season, we have training specific to our field. With CMH, we spend, probably 4 or 5 days as a big group, and then we split off into the different lodges, and we've got a bunch of training. With Kapow Guiding, we've got about a week-long training. What I like about what TGR is doing is like, it's kind of, it was the first company, I believe, in the film world that's like brought in guides, brought in educators, and created a specific training for what you guys are doing. Is that right, Nick?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if there's been someone doing it before, but they started taking it really seriously for quite a long time before I was involved, and I've been there for like 7 or 8 years now. And then it's also because we're doing the ski filming stuff, we have like obviously a really unique set of circumstances, and we are in, you know, different weird snowpacks across the world, and we're often going into like these unknown mountain ranges. And our guides even are unfamiliar with the terrain or the snowpack, and so we have to do a lot of kind of digging and figuring out what's going on in these weird places that people don't often ski. And so having that set up specifically for what we're doing, plus you're also doing all the training with all the people that you're going to be shooting with in the field. So you start to learn people's strengths and weaknesses, and maybe someone in your group is stronger at first aid, someone in your group is stronger at building, you know, makeshift rescue setups or running communications, and you just end up like naturally kind of fitting into your piece in the equation. And when you have those larger crews, it's obviously a little bit easier if something is to go wrong. But we also practice scenarios where there's multiple burials and not many rescuers, or maybe there's a small group and you're only one film or 2 skiers. And so we do like a pretty broad range of things, and it's really, really handy. And it's not, yeah, again, it's not like a certification necessarily you get each time we do it, but it's really practical.
Nick, I think at some point in this discussion, we're going to talk about the Avalanche that you were involved in last spring. And, you know, in a lot of ways, the success in the rescue, the fact that you're here today is a huge, like we got to put a massive amount of cred into the crew's rescue, because it was a unique rescue, not a typical, like just like you learn in an Avalanche course. But I think a huge amount of that success comes from the training that you did early season, regardless if that's a cert or not, if that's correct to say.
Yeah, I mean, we really, for those who don't know, it's like you had a wrench thrown into the mix, and it's really cool to see how everyone just adapted to the situation immediately, and there was no hesitation in the next steps. And so, yeah, it pays dividends having good partners.
And I want to dive into, so Alex Klassen is going down the guiding road. Alex, you have done trainings from ski touring operations to cat ski operations to, you know, your own uncle is also a ski touring guide. What are some of the biggest things that you've taken away from, actually, you know what I should ask too is, in terms of education, I believe you have your Avalanche operations level 1, is that right?
I do, yeah. I took my Ops 1 about a year ago, and then I've recently also taken my professional level Avalanche search and rescue course.
And I want to dive into that so it's super clear, because there's actually 2 different outlets to go. I want to dive into this because it's like the recreational side of things is the AST level 1 and level 2. Level 2 really learning about the decision-making side of it, like taking the Avalanche bulletin and applying that information to the terrain. But because Alex is going down the professional world, Alex, you took the Ops level 1 at a super young age. I believe you have to be 19 to take that, and that's learning the recording standards. And then the search and rescue part is actually like some pretty legit hands-on transceiver exercise in an operational sense. Is that right? No, I just kind of lost Alex there. How would I dive right into Amy? You are a professional ski patroller on Blackcomb. I believe, like, how many days do you guys spend, and what Avalanche education do you have?
I personally have only volunteered. Just want to put that out there. I've been too young to be professional. But yeah, I personally only have my AST 1 because I was hoping to take my ops because I just turned 19 this year, but just with school and everything, I haven't taken it yet. But there's so much training that goes on. Everyone is like, the majority of the people are probably about double my age, like people that have been in the field for a really, really long time, just really experienced. And like, we have everything from dog handlers to search and rescue members, doctors, paramedics, like people that are just so talented and just so experienced in so many different ways. So yeah, probably once or twice a week you're doing an hour or 2 of training, and it's just like, just to keep on top of those skills, especially like with some people being in search and rescue, they've got different tricks and skills that they've learned from different trainings, and like everyone comes together and it's such a good team environment. They can just like pick up from so many different people. But yeah, like nothing's really set in stone, but I definitely practice as much as I can and bug people as much as I can to get as much info out of them as possible, because they're just such knowledgeable people. So yeah, again, like the only certification I have is AST1. Hoping to take Ops1 as soon as I can. And yeah, all the information I picked up from my coworkers.
Well, I think you're hitting on something that's really important is, you know, Avalanche Canada has developed a really cool curriculum with the AST level 1 and level 2, but there is a lot of importance in mentors. And you're getting that with the professional level, like the Blackcomb Ski Patrol is so legit. So it's just not as official, but it's gaining, like on the daily, I'm sure you're picking up tips and tricks here and there. And that's where I want to dive into like Tatum. So Tatum, I believe you have your AST level 2, is that right?
Yeah, I've actually taken it twice. I've taken it on skis and I've taken it off my snowmobile.
Well, tell us about that. What was the difference between taking an AST on skis compared to on a snowmobile?
So much different. And if you are doing any sledding, I would highly recommend it. I learned so much from that experience. Obviously with sleds, we get into the mountains so far, so quick, and it changes things a lot. So it was really valuable for me to redo the course off my snowmobile. I just was able to take away so much from that.
So you are big on, like, you haven't taken the professional level Avalanche training, but you're big on mentors and stuff. So who would you say, you know, especially in Pemberton, who are your mentors, or who's your crew that you go out filming with?
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. With the crews that I'm going out with here, some of my best friends, every preseason we get together and we do a day similar to Nick, less structured. Obviously, we don't have professional guides step in and it's not as structured of a program, but it's really important to practice this stuff with the people you're actually going out with your partners. So we'll have 5 or 6 of us go out and just practice different scenarios and just using our beacons and really like working as a group. And yeah, it's super important. So friends like, MP, Kai, Callum Pettit, just, tons of shredders around Whistler and Pemberton. So yeah, it's definitely like never hard to find partners, but it's really important that you're picking your partners wisely and you're trusting who you're going out with. And I think, you know, you really have to focus on that, because you can't just go out with somebody who's not at your level, who's not bettering their Avalanche education. It's super important to practice it every season.
Well, Tatum, I think that's an important thing to point out is you've invested years to get where you're at, whether it's like, I remember even hearing from your dad about how many years you probably devoted like an entire season to learn how to snowmobile, because you knew that you needed to, like, in order to film, you needed to get so legit on a sled to get on out there so that people would actually go out with you. But you can imagine there's so many people probably been listening in today. They're just like, they're getting into backcountry. They're trying to find that crew. Like, Tatum, your crew is legit, but that's taken years of building that up to get there. You've put the time in to contribute to the team for those sorts of decisions. You're not just hiring the guide, showing up and then filming, right? Like, it's like you've really put a lot of time in.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, you want to be an asset, right? You want to have something to contribute to the group. You don't want to be the weak link. So really being organized and having that knowledge and that safety component is just so important, and choosing who you're traveling in the mountains with is like very key.
Guys, I want to dive into the social media aspect of this. Before I get too far ahead, and just everyone that's listening, really stoked to announce that we're actually giving a transceiver away at the end of this. So Mcnutt is donating for a prize, the Barry Vox S, which I believe that stands for simple. But please stick around to the end. We are going to give away a friggin' transceiver. These things aren't cheap, and this is such a legit prize. So stick around, not only for the content, but the transceiver. So guys, I want to dive into asking about the social media. So Amy, you're up first. I actually want to know, what is your favorite social media follow? Who do you enjoy following the most?
Honestly, I think I gotta give it to one of my friend's dad, Wayne Flan, the Avalanche blog. I think it's Wango Whistler Wango. He does all the Avalanche blogging around Whistler, and yeah, he's been a pretty solid follow for a long time now.
But what do you get out of following him?
Oh, just about, like, he's posting every single day. He's got his blog that he updates every single day about the conditions they're changing and things that he's observed. He's been out in the field and he's gathering all that information, and it's not just it's just that Instagram just portraying more of the pictures behind the detailed blog. I guess that's kind of the way to get going into the blog, is seeing those beautiful pictures of skiing POW and how do I do that and what does this mean and is that dangerous, and because there's all different types of people on social media, which is definitely hard to target because different people with backgrounds of not skiing at all and just want to go ski powder and doesn't know what that means or how that can be dangerous. So yeah, it's really cool how he just throws that stuff on the gram, and then there's so much more to it on his actual blog. So yeah, it's been a good thing to follow along.
What I like about this as a topic is, it's so easy to put negative energy towards social media, but I am fully guilty of, like, I have certain people, especially based on Revelstoke, I have certain people seeing, where they're skiing on that any given day, what it looks like. Or maybe it's like, if I plan on a trip to go to the coast, I'm going to probably start watching Tatum. It's one thing to follow the Avalanche bulletin. That certainly gives you the Avalanche problems. And what I love about the bulletin giving you the problems, it's like, if a problem is wind slab in the Alpine, it's like, that's also going to give you a pretty good indicator that the snow conditions in the Alpine are probably not that great. But I love being able to use social media to be like, where are people skiing and what are the snow conditions like? Because ultimately, that's what, I don't need to go out and find the Avalanche problems. I want to go out and avoid them and find the best POW. So the example that you gave is like such a good example of the people that I like to follow. I mean, Chris Rubens is a classic example. He's also an Avi ambassador. I love watching where that guy is skiing. So the next question, I'm going to roll on over to Alex. Alex, I'm really curious, and I have a feeling I know who this is going to be, but in terms of the pro skiers out there, who do you really look up to in the ski world?
I mean, it's pretty easy for me to say any of the local pros around town here in Revelstoke, Greg Hill or Chris Rubens. I've been around Chris for a long time through courses and with you, Marty, and he's always been an inspiration for me. His passion for skiing and his love for the outdoors is amazing. And I get a lot out of every time I meet him and every time I ski with him. He's the best.
What is it about his posts on social media that you enjoy?
I find he's doing some pretty cool stuff, whether he's doing Avalanche Canada Ambassador or he's doing electric fueled adventures with Greg Hill, or just really pushing the limits of kind of what he can do and skiing some big lines.
I'm going to just dive right into Nick. So Nick, you have, well, I mean, I just said it. I know that you skied a first descent yesterday based on social media, but I'm actually really curious, like, I don't want to dive into too much about like the career pressures and stuff, but I'm actually quite curious, what has been, like, you as a pro skier, tons of followers, in your eyes, what do you see as the most successful post to date?
I mean, I think like out of the top 5, it's like all 5 of them were in relation to my accident. They've all been kind of in this last year and centered around what happened that day and telling the story and what we've learned, and also like what's come to light across the industry with, like, the transceiver that failed that day and what kind of a problem that can throw at you when you least expect it or least need it. And just, yeah, sharing all that stuff has been definitely getting like the most attention from folks. And the numbers aren't lying. It's definitely had the most engagement and eyes on it. And I think that it's stuff that's like really relatable because there's a lot of people who have the specific model I was using that day, but also a lot of people who have had loved ones who have been in an avalanche or something that can only imagine what it would be like to be buried like with no signal is a pretty big. It's a pretty big one, and it's heavy, and it's anyone who skis in the backcountry or snowmobiles or snowboards or anything can relate to what that would be like, because it's one thing to be buried and have the equipment working, and it's another to have it fail on you when you're under the snow. So yeah, that stuff all got a lot of traction and started a pretty big conversation.
Well, I think that is the coolest part of what came out of this, is the conversations that I saw from various, Facebook groups to people that I met on the street, that sort of thing, is that, in an avalanche, it doesn't always go along this like perfect rescue that we learn in maybe an AST1, where it's like there's a perfect little avalanche and there's one person buried. We've seen the last seen point. The reality is in any rescue, or just like this is specific to avalanches, is like a lot of stuff is going on. There's like, we have been surprised and we're going to anticipate that surprise. So it's like, what I was really impressed with is watching that whole thing is like, there was, and just so people haven't seen this, what happened is Nick was buried in an avalanche and his transceiver got knocked off. The crew that responded, and it's like, I'm actually getting goosebumps just talking through this, especially watching the TGR film, is I can't, that's like the worst nightmare, is pulling out your transceiver, looking for your partner and not having a signal. But what I found was the huge success to this is like instantly everyone recognized this issue, that there's no signal. Right away, I think Christina called out saying, all right, let's start a probe line. And then right after that, I believe, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the filmer that knew exactly where you were, the last seen point. He pulled out his probe and got a probe strike. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as there was no signal, it was pretty much like people had already started probing. We had a large group that day, so there was 6 people involved in the rescue aside from me, and there was, 2 people were basically looking for the transceiver signal, and everyone else was building shovels and probes and getting ready to dig and getting in position. And so there was some probing happening, I think, even before it was like for sure there's no signal. And yeah, they had kind of, because it wasn't your typical avalanche the way that we think about it, with like a failed layer in the snowpack or a slab releasing. It was a broken pillow, so it was a little bit unique in that sense, because it was like a pretty isolated little area. Like the area where the burial could have happened was quite small in relation to a typical avalanche path, and it was a bit unique in that sense. So they kind of saw where I had hit a tree, and they knew for sure I was below that tree, probably fall line, maybe slight triangle from that tree at some point. And their search area was relatively small, which was pretty lucky, but they ended up, before they actually did like everyone go to the last seen point and do a structured probe search, like grid search, which is basically, a technique you would use for a body recovery. It's not really something actively for like avalanche rescue normally. There was a lucky strike from one of our cinematographers, and they all kind of had a hunch where I would be, and they were within the ballpark, and he just got really lucky. And yeah, so I was out of there like in under 6 minutes with no signal, and I was 1.5 meters down. So it was a pretty amazing set of circumstances that led to that.
That's incredible. Like, that is massive props to the rescue. But would you not attribute that to a well-trained crew?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, those guys are like I said, we all get together and we practice this stuff a lot. And, it was also like, part of it was that it was like a film shoot. And so you have 6 people that were all watching me closely as it happened, rather than, just a group of people skiing normally. And also that there was a few things going for us that day, as far as like how far up a slope I was from where they were, and all of those things that led them to get to me relatively quickly. But yeah, I mean, you could have someone there or a group of people there who don't have a signal and they don't really know what to do, and it takes them a few minutes to figure out what to do next. And time is of the essence in that situation. So all the training paid off, and they didn't skip a beat. Like, as soon as there was no signal, it's like, okay, what's the next? Like, let's probe, let's find them, like from here down, and they were on it. So yeah, it's and that was also like part of my mentality under the snow, like helping keep me calm and stop me from kind of panicking. And like, I wasn't able to breathe very well, but being able to calm myself down was crucial, and knowing that I was with who I was with that day definitely helped my mindset under there.
Nick, can you just like quickly, I'm gonna get to Tatum on this, but it's like, I want you to quickly summarize, like, when you drop in, Who's watching you, and what type of communications do you have before you drop in?
So like our typical setup is that we'll have radio, obviously radios, everyone has radios. And like, I can't tell you enough how crucial having radios is with a group. And especially if you're snowmobiling or you're skiing slightly further away than others and stuff, like all it takes is just one thing to happen. And if you're not within earshot, and in the dense forest, it's like 100 feet away, you can't hear when people are yelling. So radios are a super useful tool, and I really recommend people get some. But yeah, typically it's once we're ready to roll, it's like I'll be on the radio telling them that I'm dropping in 10 seconds, and it's like a copy, everyone's ready. And so you know that like at that point, once you're dropping in, everyone else who's there, unless there's maybe another athlete is on some other line, they can't see you or for whatever reason, but everyone else is watching, right? And that's the beauty of like the film ski setup, is that you do have these people who are paying close attention. So typically it's like a lot of radio communication throughout the day. And you'll find when you have those radios, you end up talking at a distance, just like casually, because like trying to yell all the time it's a lot of work, and it's not that fun. So the radios make life a lot easier.
Tatum, when Nick was talking about this, it makes me think about an avalanche that happened in your season edit. Like this might have been maybe even more than 5 years ago. There was, I believe it was in the Pemberton area, but it was like, there was I think it was like coming off a glacier. It was like the small bulge, and you were like, it wasn't a huge feature. It was like a small feature. There had been evidence of like, it looked like the spring, evidence of some old crowns. You were doing some sort of turn, you aired into this thing. And then what had happened is you actually just fell forward. And what would be called, if there was no human involved in it, we might call it a size 1 avalanche. But just the way that you fell, it was like you skied this, you like slapped this turn, you fell forward, and it was like kind of head first. And as you fell head first, the slide, which was super small, it was like maybe 20 meters wide, maybe not even that, like 15. The slide actually rolled right over top of you, and you were gone. Seconds later, you could see the hand poke out. So actually, I want to ask questions about that, because that sort of thing could have happened if you were just rolling down as like a big crew, no one was watching each other. But I believe on that day, you had a filmer, and there was also an athlete watching that when that went down. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that was just a classic example of what little amount of snow it takes to fully bury you. Like, I couldn't believe that I had been buried then and there. It was just slough to me. I kind of, like, as you said, got lost off this little bulge. It was on the ice cap, so there wasn't really any main features that I could distinguish, and kind of got off my line a little bit and landed a bit funny off of the chunk of ice. And as I was falling forward, like you said, I just kind of like laughed. I was like, oh, like my slough's gonna take me out here a little bit, but no big deal. And next thing I knew, I was just like, whew, big white wall over my head, and I was fully buried.
You're buried.
I was like, holy shit, I can't move. I'm totally under the snowpack here. So I threw my hand up knowing that my crew was there. Luckily, they were super close, and they had snowmobiles. So, I mean, it was like 30 seconds and I could hear their sleds turn on, and they were walking above me. And luckily I was able to get my hand up, so there was no beacon search. They were able to dig me out, and I was only under for, I would say, two and a half minutes, but that felt like 20 minutes. I mean, I was like, it's just something, it's a crazy experience, and something I never want to experience again. Like Nick said, it's super important, but really hard to stay calm down there. And I knew my crew was there, and they're so competent. And I was just so glad and holding on to that feeling, knowing, okay, they're going to be right here. They're going to be digging me out. But yeah, had the circumstance be different, who knows?
Well, you know what's kind of evident with that is so often we have this picture in our minds that an avalanche is this like massive, huge powder cloud coming down, this like, it's this white monster coming down the mountain. It's like a size 4 avalanche that's going to come and take us out or something like that. But the reality is like both Nick and Tatum, your avalanches weren't huge, but the consequence was massive. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like you said, I think you can see the shot in one of my level 1 parts. I think it was from Small World or something. But yeah, it's just like a tiny little fracture, like a size 1. Maybe it was just an absolutely classic example of what little amount of snow it takes to fully bury you. It's wild.
I mean, I kind of know the answer to this one. This is kind of directed at Nick and Tatum. And this is coming from my personal experience. I got caught in quite an avalanche when I was 18 years old. How much does your day-to-day decision-making, do you reflect on how much it sucked to get caught in an avalanche?
Yeah, I mean, my main goal for the season is to not get in an avalanche this year. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's indescribable, and it's not something you wish upon anybody. It's that feeling of helplessness is like, it's pretty real and raw, and there's no real way to put it in words, but it's, you know, it's instantly like giving into this, you know, total helplessness, and like you're at the mercy of whoever you're with that day. And hopefully they saw you, and hopefully they know what you're doing, because yeah, there's nothing you can do. You can't even wiggle a finger under there. And like you said, it doesn't take a lot, right? Especially in certain terrain, if there's any kind of a little compression or something, or just any sort of a weird terrain trap, or like a, you know, or a tree well, you know, like we talk about avalanches a lot, but tree wells are the same kind of a thing too, where it just takes like a little tiny slough in the forest and you catch your edge in the wrong spot. And yeah, you're at the mercy of whoever you're with that day. And that feeling of helplessness hits hard, and the reality sets in really quick when you can't breathe. When you go for your first breath and you can't get it, it's like a shock to the system, and it's not a pleasant feeling.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
that was actually my second experience with an avalanche. My first one, I was super young. I was 15 or 16, and there's a video of this on YouTube. I posted it years and years ago as kind of like a what not to do. I wanted to share my experience in hopes that it would help people learn from it. And I basically just drop over this convex roll, and the whole slope just breaks, like a huge, huge avalanche. And I'll never forget, like I can see it clear as day in my mind right now. I just threw my poles, kicked off my skis, and started swimming. And I managed to grab a tree. And had I not grabbed that tree, I would have been swept through tons of old growth trees, and you know, super naive, but my partner at the time, looking back at the video, he wasn't even wearing a backpack. So had I been buried, like, these are just, I look back at this and I just can't believe that, you know, I was that young and that dumb. But I think that's why we're all here, to learn. And it's hard, it's super cringy to think that I was, you know, at that stage at one point, but we're all beginners. We all have to start somewhere, and learning from people who've made mistakes is important. It's actually really funny. A couple years ago, I went to an Avalanche 1 course that I was taking with some kids and kind of mentoring them through that. And the person running the course threw some videos up online, up on the screen of like the classic what not to do, and my video
no way.
That video, and I was like, I'm really embarrassed to admit this, but that's actually me. And he looks at me, he's like, no way, like he couldn't believe it. He's like, I've been using that in my avalanche seminars for years. It's like one of the most classic do not do this things.
But Tatum, I want to stop you there really quick, because I want to throw you a ton of props, because you know, I want to paint the picture for everyone that hasn't seen this avalanche. Tatum was skiing in the trees. It was I don't know if it was a high avalanche danger day, but there was a known weak layer. So Tatum, you know, you were doing what you knew. You were skiing in the trees. You're doing sled laps with your partner. But why I want to throw this props out is like an avalanche initiated, but it's so cool to see, like you're in the debris. So you're riding this avalanche, and then you grab a tree, and it's like that tree was like, instead of giving up or not freaking out, you grabbed a tree and that saved your life. And it's like, that's what painted the picture so perfectly, is it's like, yes, there has been failure, but success was yeah. I mean, I got to throw you tons of props from that one, because you did the thing that went wrong, but you found a solution instantly.
Definitely, yeah. I haven't skied with pull straps on my poles since, not one day since.
And you know what? I want to dive in, and so Amy and Alex, there's a question coming your way around like who you like to follow, but what we've just witnessed here is we've watched people that we look up to, Nick and Tatum. They've talked about incidents they've been involved in, and we've learned a couple things here, like never wearing pull straps, or getting a dialed crew, or finding that finding that tree to make sure you don't do everything you can not to get caught in the debris. But there's so much power in, we can't, as humans, we need to learn from our mistakes. That's just how it works. But in the avalanche world, we're not going to go around and jump in avalanches from those mistakes. We need to rely on, learning from our mentors. And especially with this COVID landscape, we can't go out for like we're not going to go out for a beer with a mentor. We're not. It's hard to gather. So we in a lot of ways, we're using social media to learn avalanche education. And so the question that I want to ask Amy and Alex is what type of follows do you guys like to see? Or maybe there's been something that you've learned a lot through social media, because that is the platform that we can learn from other people's incidents. So can you give me an example of someone that you guys like to follow, or an incident that you have enjoyed following that you've learned from? How about Amy? Why don't you go first?
Yeah, sure. Honestly, learning from Nick's story, it went so viral. It was really amazing how you went through the video by video, all the different steps, and how that all happened, and how it came together, and your learning experiences, and why it was so successful. I think that was unbelievable. And as Marty said earlier, having mentors is so important. I'm very thankful to have that from so many ski patrollers. There's so many rad ladies and gentlemen up there that are just happy to take me under their wing, and who have had big experiences. And I mean, doing avalanche control first thing in the morning, sometimes things go wrong up there, trying to get things open to the public. But definitely, I guess what I'm trying to say is having a mentor is really cool, but also being vulnerable in social media has been something that's, I don't know, I think it's pretty new. Definitely, I've seen a lot more of it recently, just getting quite real about things that have gone wrong, because it's so easy to think that everything looks perfect, and everyone's just living their best life out there. But it was really interesting, Nick, how you put that out video by video. And I mean, there was an equipment failure, but personally, I never even thought, okay, what happens if a transceiver turns off?
Totally.
I've never thought about that. No matter how many different scenarios I've run through my head or stories I've heard, that's not something that's crossed my mind. So I can't help but feel like if I was in that situation trying to rescue my buddy whose transceivers failed, I would definitely be stunned in the moment and take a minute, and I wouldn't even know what to do, type of thing. So I know I'm definitely not the only person that's felt like that. I mean, I'm still young and learning a ton every single day, but that experience felt close to home, even though I don't even know you personally, Nick. But yeah, definitely went around town, went around all my friend groups, and yeah, just a huge learning outcome. So yeah, it's cool to see social media being used in such a great way.
Well, Amy, I love this, because it's we always bash social media for just showing the glam, right? It's showing the perfect powder turn or the first descent. But what you're saying is you're kind of thanking Nick for showing that vulnerability, putting Nick just showed that there was a failure, and he showed that to the world.
For sure.
And there's so much learning in that, is there not?
Yeah, well, there's so much. And even me personally, I always find people are messaging me thinking that everything's so perfect and it looks like you're getting out and the snow is always perfect. And that's just me with a small percentage of the following that both Tatum and Nick have on their media platforms. And even me personally, I feel a bit shy to put something up that's quite vulnerable, and because you're always going to get backlash. You're going to get people who, like, even if there's an accident like yours, Nick, and if it was to end unfortunately in a fatality, like there's gonna be backlash either way. There's gonna be positives, negatives either way. And for you to be able to live and tell that story is so powerful and so impactful on all of your followers and all of the community that is backcountry skiing. So it's not easy. I'm sure it was the most emotional thing and distressing thing that you had to go through personally, coping with the incident, but it's definitely a huge learning experience for everyone that has seen those videos.
Alex, I want to ask you a question, because you've had a lot of mentors over the years, whether it's your father, your uncle, various other people. But I want to ask about a story. Like, is there a story that stands out in your mind that has been some of the biggest learnable? Do you have a story, like a case study or that sort of thing that sort of sticks out in your mind?
There is a story that's actually quite recent from this winter. I think it was on a Min report, or I might have even seen it on a Facebook page of some snowmobilers who were out going, just kind of doing the wrong thing, not having any gear on their backpacks and just having all their gear on their sleds. And they ended up getting in quite a hairy situation where a couple of their buddies got buried. And I found that there was quite a lot of backlash on the Facebook group and the forums that I saw it got posted on, but it was quite a large learning experience. So I don't have a lot of details from that specific event, but I'm kind of touching on the whole backlash thing. There was a lot of backlash, and they were vulnerable, and their posts said that they had made mistakes, but they had learned from them, and they luckily no one was fatally injured or anything like that, but they had learned very quickly that their mistakes could have cost them their lives or their buddies' lives. And that really sticks in my mind, is just learning from your mistakes and then learning from other people's mistakes to try and be able to prevent making your own mistakes, I guess. That's the main thing that sticks out in my mind when you ask me that.
Oh, that's so cool, because I want to hit on that. And I just want to quick plant the seed for all of you guys that are listening. We've got a couple minutes left. I want you to hit some questions to us. So hit on that chat box, hit us up with some questions. But I want to dive into what Alex is hitting on here, and what makes Canada so cool with what Avalanche Canada is doing is, I'm going to start out by saying that there is this community of sharing, that there's this acceptance that there has been an avalanche, and that everyone else out there needs to learn from this, because this wasn't like this 10, 20 years ago. Traditionally, if there's been an avalanche, you're ashamed for it, so you don't report. And the fact that the MIN report, which is the Mountain Information Network, and I know all of you guys have seen this on Avalanche Canada with the different areas, but it's like, I can tell you that as a professional working, as these athletes checking things out in the bulletin, and every recreationalist out there, if you have seen something, if there's an anomaly, if something has happened, even if there's nothing big happen and there's something that you are surprised on, it is so important to throw down that MIN report. And what I am so proud of the entire Avalanche community is that we feel comfortable being vulnerable. We feel comfortable reporting this. And Alex, I know what you're getting at. It's like, it's hard to see that the shaming, but it's like, hey, look at everyone else. Like, everyone needs to know that we've all been there before. We've all learned, we've all made those mistakes. And the biggest picture here is that if you can report this, then you can potentially save someone else's lives. And it's like, it's so cool that Avalanche Canada has developed this platform that people can report on. So we're gonna dive into some questions. Maybe I can get some help here on some of the best questions. I'm not actually seeing a ton of them.
Yeah, you bet. We got one from Shash Hiraj, who's asking if the link to the Avalanche video that Tatum mentioned could be shared in some way. And if you could somehow, I'm not sure if you've got a typing interface, but we can somehow make sure that that video gets shared.
What we can do is it's actually Tatum's season as an edit. So you know what? Why don't we do this? Tatum, why don't you throw a link on your social media so people can actually do some work on this. So like, Tatum, pull up that link, put it on Facebook or Instagram, and people can pop on Tatum. Does that work?
Yeah, that's great. I can do that.
Yeah. I mean, I still have it too. I still use it on Avalanche educational trips.
Awesome. We've got another one here from Adam who's asking, do you have recommendations to manage the excitement before dropping a line? Do you have a final mental check before dropping to make sure it's safe?
Oh, that's such a good question.
For me personally, there's no real final mental check. I think we go through a big process before dropping into a line, and when I'm standing on top of it, I'm fully confident that nothing has changed in the past hour since we've looked at it or whatever timing. So we do a lot of scoping from the bottom, and my whole mentality is trying to psych myself up to ski the line. But when I'm on top, I feel safe and I feel confident. And if there's any doubt in anyone's mind in my group that the line that we're skiing shouldn't be skied or something like that, we have to have a conversation about it. I find a lot it's just super important to have a group mentality and a good group to be skiing with, because if someone's not uncomfortable but they don't feel safe enough or something like that to be vulnerable with the group and voice their concern, then you should maybe reevaluate your group.
I think that's a really good response. Just to add to it, I like what you said about, you know, everything is analyzed before you're on top of the line. At least in my eyes, you know, like as soon as I'm up there, I'm not questioning anything. I'm not like second guessing. I've already made my observations and really like made that assessment prior to standing up there. And by the time I'm up there, if I'm having that weird gut feeling, then I think it's super important to listen to that instinct and step off.
I guess on that topic, you guys, when you ski a line, how much are you thinking in the middle of the line where an escape route or a safety zone is if you do get surprised? Do you have a lot of those conversations at the top anyway?
I think a lot of the time that's planned when you're kind of picking out your line of choice, right? Like you're always looking for, you know, what could go wrong and where, and what should I do, and where's the high terrain to get to if something were to happen. And a lot of that stuff needs to be kind of like ingrained in your plan for the whole run before you've even decided to ski it, really. And especially when you're skiing some of this stuff that's like kind of the steeper fluted terrain, or, you know, bigger ribs with convex rolls and stuff, like there's always places that you should have kind of predetermined where you know, like, you know, if there's anything just to happen or there's a moment of hesitation for whatever reason, some curveball gets thrown at you, you've got kind of your exit strategy kind of like muscle memory almost before you've gone in there, because you don't want to be like panicking when something happens and trying to figure out, looking back and forth, like where should I end up or what do I do now. It's like you've kind of got to be skiing on the conservative side, ready to get to your exit.
Well, I think what you guys are getting at is there's so much that goes into the decision making before you're looking through your ski tips. It's like by the time you're looking at through your ski tips, your human desire is going to want to be like justify it's okay. So the question I want to ask all of you guys is, when you drop into a line, are you 100% yes or 100% no if there's going to be an avalanche or not? Are you at that level that you can predict avalanches to that scale?
I'll jump in. I think you can be confident in your decision making, but again, I don't think you can be 100% confident that the terrain isn't going to change. I mean, things can heat up in minutes, and by the time that you've gotten to the top there and you're about to drop in, you're going to be getting into some pretty dangerous situations if you're 100% confident that you're not going to be in an avalanche. Like, you can't let that ego or that mentality get in the way of assessing all the possible risks. Like, you're out there and everything has to be in your brain that things can go really bad today, and you're going to do everything you can to avoid that, or if they do, how you're going to get out of it safely. But I definitely think that you can't be 100% confident all the time.
I mean, that's probably the biggest thing I try to communicate as a professional guide, is like, I remember being in my teens and just getting really angry with avalanche professionals, and just like, I remember looking up at a couloir and being like, can you just tell me if it's good or not? Like, use your avalanche wording and tell me if it's yes or it's no. But the biggest thing I'm trying to communicate is like, snow science is always going to be inexact. We can nobody out there knows 100% yes, like it's never black or white if it's good to go. And then a question that just popped up, which kind of makes me think about this, is I want to hear from you guys. Have you guys ever dropped into a line where you've got like mid-run, or you maybe even looked up and skied it and you were like, even though nothing happened, do you regret diving into that line?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could say that I would not ski that pillow line in hindsight, right? The one from last season. But that being said too, it's like looking back at it, like I feel like I made the right decisions, and considering what the snowpack was doing that day and everything, like it just happened to be this, you know, glob of snow that was pasted to the side of a cliff that had almost no support, that I didn't even touch, you know, that a tiny bit of snow had just touched, and it didn't need anything really. It was just waiting for the wrong wind to knock it down. And you know, hindsight's 20/20 always. So, but I think part of that is like you can, you know, learn from even your near misses, right? Or if you see something and it was like a sketchy moment or a close call, or you kicked off some little micro wind slab that you weren't expecting halfway down some couloir or something, like, you know, a non-incident is still a learning experience, and there's a lot that can be taken away from every single run you do in the mountains, and you're never 100% in control, like you were saying. It's like you can only be as in control as you can be, but the mountains are in charge no matter what. So you just have to listen and be awake and constantly learning. Like you said, you know, being a snow expert is like that means that you know as much as anyone else knows about this like changing medium that's on this landscape where you can't see what's underneath always, and it's you know, the mountains are awake. So
we've had some awesome questions showing up here. I've got one from Vienne who's asking, do you assess risk any differently when you're out recreationally versus when you're out shooting videos, taking photos, those kinds of things? How do you assess differently?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think, yeah, it's hard sometimes, you know, and the cameras are rolling and the film crew's there and everybody's like lined up, and it's that just that feeling like you want to send it and you kind of want to ignore the signs, and you know, you work so hard all season to get here, so I'm just gonna ignore that and I'm dropping kind of thing. But no, it's like super important, I think, to dial it back in moments like that. And I think when I'm out just skiing for myself recreationally, it's the exact same thing as when I'm filming. Like I just don't let the cameras dictate what I'm gonna do, and I don't let that influence any of my decision making. That's super important to stay level-headed in that way.
I think a lot of people think that, like, you know, we're just skiing the stuff for the cameras, but in reality what's happening is we're out there skiing the way that we would be skiing, and the cameras are there trying to capture it and make it art and make it look pretty. And you know, there's factors such as like light, like maybe I ski more in the shade. I would say I honestly ski like more shady terrain than I do when I'm filming, because it just doesn't look as good if you're not skiing in the sun, and the best skiing is usually in the shade. So, you know, in the middle of the day in March, like we actually don't do a whole lot of filming because all of the stuff that's in the light is kind of bad snow. And if I'm out with friends, maybe I'm actually skiing midday, but on the north faces, and it's maybe just not going to be as pretty of a shot. But between that and maybe like the way that you're actually riding, like maybe not line selection and terrain choice or anything like that, but just sort of like the way you're actually skiing down, you're skiing maybe with a bit less hesitation and a bit more aggression, but not necessarily so drastically different than your, you know, recreational ski day with your friends with no cameras. But I think light plays a pretty big factor for film related stuff, and it just basically limits what you can do more than makes you do stuff you wouldn't do otherwise.
Totally. I've got a question here from Christian. He's got his hand up, so I'm going to unmute you, Christian, and see if you've still got your question and want to speak up.
Oh, cool.
Christian, you're unmuted. Are you there? Christian Landry? Nope. Earth to Christian? Nope. He's out there.
We tried.
So someone else was asking about kind of your assessment at the top of a slope. You have to make sure you're dialed. You guys were talking about this, and you want to be making your decisions before you're looking through your ski tips. What if you're dropping into an aspect that you didn't have a chance to climb up and observe on your way to it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like you always want to be pretty sure of what you're getting into, and maybe you've looked at some micro terrain that's comparable. It's the same as like digging the snow pit in a safe area near something that you're gonna plan on skiing, right? Like you're getting some kind of information, not necessarily being in the place you're gonna ride, but something that might be directly relatable to that. And I think reading the Avalanche bulletins gives you a pretty good idea of which aspects might have a suspect layer, and reading the min reports might give you a pretty good idea of what's actually been happening, what people are seeing. So, trying to just collect all that information and use it to make decisions. But yeah, like we use, all kinds of different ways to get to the top of these runs. And a lot of times the best way to get to stuff is from the back and not from the front side.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get a lot of information from, kicking a bit of snow into certain lines, or cutting a bit of a cornice off, and doing kind of like a slope test, like a little, dropping some weight on the slope. And we'll often ski cut stuff or ski a run next to what we're going to ski before we actually ski the film line or whatever, a warm up run.
Yeah, great ideas. Cool, there's more. Juan Pablo's asking, what did you do to start free riding and filming? Could you give some advice to people who want to start getting into this themselves?
Yeah, I don't really know. How do you get into filming and professional skiing, Nick? It seems like it's been so long since I've started, but I think it's just natural, right? Like you're out, you're having fun, and you're progressing, and eventually you just get to a point where it's like you want to share this content, you want to share the skills that you're learning, and you kind of want to put yourself out there. And I think it's a really fun thing. Like it's definitely a dream, and we're lucky to do it, but it's also really important to be out there with the right people and the right partners and the right crews that are going to keep you safe, because that's absolutely the most important thing.
I think like a really big piece of that puzzle is, there's a lot of really good skiers, but you do need to become friends with someone who's kind of the dedicated camera operator, production person, some up and coming photographer, whatever it might be. Like you're going to have to align with a friend who's got a passion for capturing that stuff. And that's what it was for me. And throughout the years, we kind of got noticed eventually, but I wasn't the guy to hold the camera, and it's, maybe you're taking turns with your friends doing that. Maybe that's the way it works, or maybe one of your friends is really fired up on trying to capture that stuff, and that's his passion, and not necessarily being the one to hit the cliffs or whatever. So yeah, finding someone who's willing to basically point a camera at you is a pretty big challenge. And anyone who's in professional free skiing knows that that's actually like a pretty big part of the battle. Is there's a huge amount of people who want to do the job that Tatum and I are doing, but far less people actually are wanting to do the job of being, the unsung hero, the cinematographer, mm-hmm. the guy behind the lens, carrying the super heavy backpack and all that stuff. So,
absolutely. Maya's got a great one here. If anybody can chime in on this one, what's the most memorable tip you've received from a mentor?
I got a pretty good one from a member on Ski Patrol who told me, I started ski patrolling when I was 16. I was super young, definitely quite questionable, but it was just everything. I just want to ski everything I saw on site. Like there's all these lines in the backcountry. I was just asking everyone, bugging everyone about the info on them. And one thing that she told me was always make your day plan turning around, like don't plan to ski that. So mm-hmm. That's the cherry on top, and making that always okay to turn around. And I mean, you can't take that entirely literally, because not every time you're just going to ski up to or skin up to something all day and then just turn around and ski down. But it's just like the process of thinking about what you're going to ski and gathering as much information as you can, and then you get to the top and you decide, like, what, today's not the day, and just being okay to like turn around and making that always something that you're thinking about every time you strap on your skins, like what the outcome of the day is going to be. So yeah, I never really thought so much about that, but yeah, being okay with turning around is, I guess, long story long.
On the photographer front, Vienne also was wondering what kind of setup and preparation do you see photographers and videographers taking, or what steps do they take to safely get the best shots for the gram?
I mean, I think a big part of it is just going through all the same training that we're doing together, and the only difference is that maybe they're not putting their body on the line quite as much in a sense of, you know, the gravity fight and the impact and stuff, but they're pretty exposed if they're, you know, on slope or trying to pick terrain that's like, you know, got a high vantage point where they can be completely safe is always ideal, and it doesn't always work that way, but you know, it kind of has to be that way if there's any sort of, you know, instability or something, or there's any kind of question mark that you're never going to be like skiing on top of your cinematographer or your photographer. And yeah, for them, a lot of the time it's like they're dealing with a completely different aspect, because often we're skiing in this, you know, we're skiing this terrain on this side of the valley and they're on the other side of the valley. And so they're on their own different adventure dealing with a different set of problems. Like maybe they're on the hot aspect and they've got something else going on. And there's been more than one time that I could think of where, you know, the reason why we didn't shoot something was because a cinematographer couldn't get it to a place where he felt safe. And you have to, you know, listen to that. And it's everyone's voice is as important to listen to. And if any one person in your group, if it's a regular group, it's the same thing. If any one person is uncomfortable, you can't just force them to go on out of their comfort zone. You know, maybe it's better for them to be kind of leading the charge that day as far as decision making if they're feeling like taking a more conservative approach.
Absolutely. Good advice. Owen's wondering, how do you encourage / train for keeping judgment in mind for somebody who's learning how to enjoy the backcountry safely? So how do you kind of put the euphoria in the back seat and keep judgment front and center?
I think that one's tough because it's like, I think experience comes into the mix with that. And I want to dive into saying that a lot of people make decisions in avalanche terrain based around their ski skill. So it's like you look at a slope and it's like in bounds, totally feel comfortable skiing that piece of terrain, but you apply that out of bounds and it's like, you know, that steep chute that would have been in bounds, easy to ski, apply that out of bounds and it's like, or it's backcountry. There's a lot of factors that go into that. And I think what's kind of cool with tonight is just kind of summarizing almost here is like, it doesn't matter how good of a skier you are. You know, avalanche conditions does affect everyone. So I kind of took that in a different direction, but really wanted to focus on, doesn't matter how good of a skier you are. Avalanche conditions are a factor for everyone.
Yeah, and you have to, I think, learn how to get satisfaction from different parts of the trip, from being out with your friends, from actually giving it a shot, from heading out to your line. You know, those things can be satisfying in their own right. And if that's good enough, then maybe the line can be secondary.
I just think it'd be so cool to see everyone, like if the whole crew of us went skiing, you'd expect like we're all ambassadors or pro skiers. On any given day, if the avalanche conditions were, you know, let's say it was high or considerable, or, you know, it's like, this group of people isn't pushing the envelope. They just know when it's good to go, and that's when they're sending it, and that's when they're capturing the action. It's not like on any given day they're sending it, which is like, seems like it in the ski movies, you know?
Yeah,
I just wanted to add that question. Just being able to like leave that excitement kind of in the back seat is, I think, what you should be looking forward to during your days out is getting back home and being able to do it again. And like understanding that needs to be an option if you want to be stoked on skiing and stoked on backcountry, that getting home at the end of the day should be your #1 priority. So yeah.
Absolutely. So I'll throw out one more question, but I think we should do this giveaway. We're kind of over time here.
Heck yeah.
This one's actually straight for Marty here. He's asking directly to Marty. Jim wants to know, what is the secret to a perfect tip shot? Do longer skis take?
Well, no, you know, like, I want to throw this right into Nick, because I posted on, Nick gave me the like mind-blowing shot here of like, you take the pano, like the pano function, instead of like pano on your phone like this, and you flip that pano like vertical, and that's how you get your shot. But I mean, like, if people are gonna get totally stoked, you need to have your poles perfect, your ski tips perfect, and then that perfect, whatever you're probably not going to ski but looks rad. I think less than 50% of what I take a tip shot of is I actually ski it, but maybe Nick's in a different scenario.
I've upgraded actually from the vertical pan. I got the newer iPhones, got the wide,
Yeah, that's a
wide
wide
angle
angle.
lens,
At a
and
moment,
makes a
lens
big
is awesome.
difference.
Totally.
The wide helps, yeah. Yeah, but it always, like, watching people take a tip shot's always hilarious because they're just in the funniest body position. You know, it's like, I don't know if you follow that page, Influencers in the Wild, but I'm sure there'll be a skier taking a tip shot on there one day.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just goes to show it doesn't need to necessarily be the like professional video or the professional photo. Just something that captures emotion is what does well in this day and age.
Hold up one sec. Before we go to the giveaway, I've got one more question here from somebody who has their hand raised. And it's always fun to get somebody on the mic here.
Oh, nice.
And I'm pretty sure they've still got their question because it's a new hand raised. It's Ben Valance. I'm going to unmute you now and you can talk to these folks. Ben, speak away. Are you there?
Come on, Ben.
We're here for you. Okay, it's not happening.
Ben, you let us down, Ben. And
There
you did not
more
win an
questions
Avalanche
here, but-
transceiver.
It could have been, or wait, we've got one from Lakin here. He's got his hand up. And just, oh wait,
Wait, what are the best conditions to try new tricks in, and like how to find the right jump?
awesome question, Ben. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
Ben.
a really good question. I would say you definitely want powder. I mean, that's obvious. You're going to want to learn in powder. And you don't really want to pick a landing that's too big or too steep, because if you mess it up, you can end up doing this like ragdoll thing where you end up, you know, kind of getting hurt trying to stop yourself falling. And so when I was learning when I was younger, I was actually learning on jumps that were pretty small, but they were really steep takeoffs, and they were kind of just like little molehills out in the flats. And so you land and it's like, it's kind of over. It's a little downslope landing, but it's done. There's no avalanche hazard there. Maybe your in run is the avalanche hazard, right? But yeah, something that's like a really low consequence. If you fall, it's kind of like you're just landing in a hot tub or in a swimming pool.
Yeah, here in Kimberly, there's no jumps.
No, I grew up there.
You gotta
There's not
build
very many jumps. Yeah, I was lucky growing up there. We had a terrain park actually, and I didn't really love learning in the park just because it's hard packed and stuff. But we would go. Maybe I'm not allowed to say this. We go to the golf course up by the ski hall, and that has a couple of pretty good spots if there's enough snow in town. There's a couple good spots on the golf course. Maybe you're not allowed to, but maybe don't tell your mom that I told you to go there.
The whole world just heard that, Nick.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet, Ben. Thanks for speaking up.
Awesome, Ben. Thanks for tuning in, dude.
Yeah, I've got one more here from Lakin. Lakin's gonna speak up. Hopefully, if they've still got their question here. Lakin, you can speak up. Oh wait, I've muted you. No, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm good. Tatum, when you landed your double backflip, what were you feeling when you first landed it?
The most stoked I've ever been in my entire life. No, that for real, that was like one of the best days of my life. And it was so special because it was with my friend who's no longer with us, JP O'Clair. And I think it was just a really classic example of somebody who was a mentor to me and a total idol and a skiing legend, somebody who I just like looked up to so much, who took the time out of his day to help me build this jump. And he groomed the in run and he walked me through every little step of it. And yeah, so when I landed that, I just gave JP the biggest hug, and it was a huge celebration, and it was like one of the funnest tricks I've ever done.
Nice. Congrats on that, by the way.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lakin. Okay, I've got no more hand raises, and those were totally the highlights. So I think we can probably move it on. Hey, Marty, what do you think?
Yeah, let's give out a transceiver for crying out loud.
Like the transceiver, it's awesome.
The transceiver, yeah.
Okay, everybody, I'm really stoked to announce that the transceiver, the Barryvox, Mcnutt Barryvox S1 is going to Angus Tweedle. Thank you, Angus,
Yeah,
for
I guess.
tuning in tonight and checking it out, and it really paid off for you. I'm happy for you. We're all happy for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really appreciate everybody here on the panel. It has been super informative for everybody. We've had a huge group of people tuning in, lots of questions. We didn't get to all of them, so apologies to those that we glossed over, but we got tons of great content from you guys. We really appreciate it. Make sure you follow these guys on the gram when you get around to it after the call today or the webinar today. And yeah, it was super great to have the conversation. It's so important to keep it going as well. So I hope that everyone who's tuned in tonight will not only share that rad photo or video, but also some important background points. Even though some of those shots can look superhuman, in the end, we are all human, and humility saves lives. So folks, thanks so much. There's many resources on our website to help you learn more about avalanche safety and how to plan your trips in the backcountry. A great place to start to get a refresher is our new online avalanche tutorial. It's called Avi Savvy. If you're interested in training, be sure to check it out on our website under the Learn tab. And as always, we appreciate your interest in avalanche safety. You can support essential programs like these by donating as little as $10 to Avalanche Canada. Just click on the link in the question chat box to donate. And you should all know that our next webinar is Thursday, March 25th. It's called Cold Snow in the Yukon and the Transition to Spring for all you Yukoners and people who are Yukon curious. Once again, pre-registration is required, just like it was tonight. We really thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts for coming out and showing an interest in avalanche safety. We hope you enjoy the rest of the winter safe from avalanches. Thank you to all our panelists, and good night.
Thanks, you guys.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for coming out.
Eat good or eat wood.
Bye.
Bye.